Mortals, welcome, Mere Mortal Lights, to another episode of the Mere Mortals Musings. This week, we are back to our regular topics with a focus, deep conversations with a light-hearted touch, trying to get into the meat of a particular topic and examine it from a Mere Mortals lens. So you get a blending of some theoretical stuff, maybe some definitions, as well as some practical things that we're actually doing. You've got Kyron here on this side.
Got one here on the other side.
On the 1st of December, we are slightly late, 9 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time on a Sunday, as usual. This topic came up in last week's one. I can't remember exactly I should probably start writing down why it came up, but it came up, psychology of investing. And I wanted to dive into this. It's the investing season at the moment, and there's going to be some fun, crazy stuff happening. It actually is, because global liquidity, there's a lot more of it, so people have more money, so they're going to be investing it, or spending it, I guess. But you probably should be investing it. We'll talk maybe why.
I don't know if that's true.
Certainly more, when there's more liquidity, there's more, asset prices go up because people are investing it, right? Or speculating. Might even touch upon the difference between those two. So I think that makes sense to me. In any case, this episode, I think it'll be less of the technique of investing. So this would be things such as dollar cost averaging, or even the areas, stonks, real estate, crypto, etc., and more on kind of like the thought patterns and emotional patterns is what I wanted to really touch upon. So I've got two main sections here. I think the first one we'll talk about emotional control, or just emotions. In the first half, do the Boostergram Lounge, and then we'll get into my second, which is related to paradox.
Ooh, okay. Your favorite thing,
paradox?
paradox?
One of my favorite topics. Yeah. So first of all, Juan, do you have any initial things that you wanted to talk about?
No, I've got lots of things, but I think it'll fall in nicely with any of the topics. All
right, sweet. So I'll start off with this one, which is mindset training. So I can't remember if I told you this in the other week, but there's this guy in the gym, Leo, and he gave me a rather interesting compliment, one I'd never heard of before. And yeah, I told this to my brother, and he's like, "That's a really good compliment because it's a unique one. You're going to remember that. Who gives a compliment like that?" And basically, he's really cool, fun guy. And he's just one of those guys he's fun to be around, and he dishes out the compliments. He says nice things. And so we're talking about training, and he's like, "Yeah, man, your training, so like, it's really, I see you in here, like every time you're in here, when I come in, you're really dedicated. I see what you're doing. It's like, it's cool." And then he came up the other day and we were chatting, and he's like, just asking about what we do and stuff. I'm like, but kind of semi-retired, don't have to work. I invest in stuff. And he's like, "Oh, you'd be a great investor. I know you would be, because I see I see your training. I see you're meticulous with your notes. You show up every day. Like, I can tell you're a really good investor." I was like, "Well, I'm not sure about that, but and I'll talk about why I'm not sure about that shortly." But it was a really interesting compliment, and it got to the mindset training, I think, which is also related to investing. And I think I prep a lot before I actually train, for example. So there's going to be quite a few analogies here to fitness and then psychology of investing, because as Leo said, there might be some overlap. So one of the things I do is actually prep a lot before training. Going to the gym, look at what I'm going to do, what I want for the session, how I'm going to approach it, especially when it comes to like emotional control. I don't want to be in the gym one day like fucking zooming around going woohoo, like just hit a PB, going crazy, and then because I don't hit a PB the next week, be down in the dumps, like fuck my life, I suck at this, like blah blah blah. So I think there's a good thing to kind of come into the gym neutral is what I've been trying to do. Have a plan, and sure, celebrate the wins, but also like if you have a bad day, it's not going to be the end of the world, and not let a bad session change my approach for the following day, the following week, the following month. this requires some reflection. I'll talk about that in the next bit. So I think it's similar for investing. You don't want to get swept away in the latest craze, the latest bullshit. If something goes up really, when I'm talking about investing here, I'm not talking about trading either. So this is more of like a buy and long-term hold. So if you're trading, I think that's a lot more closer to speculating, which is you don't particularly believe in, I don't know, the underlying asset. Once again, it doesn't really matter what it is. But it's in essence, I think there's something to do with you got to train your mind to almost not worry about it. Do your preparation. And with investing, it's a bit different to fitness because you don't actually have to do the thing. Like you do the thing once, you put some money into whatever it is, and then you just gotta like let it sit and not
kind of like forget about
and
it,
not do anything. So I think this is one of those ones where it's you need to train your mindset to not get into this state where you're constantly worrying about it. If it goes up, it changes your behavior. If it goes down, it changes your behavior. It's better to do your prep, think about what you want to do, enact it, and then just kind of like let it sit. So I think it's almost like, you probably should have a bit of mindset training before you actually invest. Who'd have think, like do some preparation. So that was one of the things, rigid focus, iron discipline to a plan, not getting swept away, stopping myself from doing a handstand in front of a pretty girl just for like flaunting is just as important as, I don't know, setting a sell limit for a meme coin if you have one, or for not, aping in, as the expression is, into the latest AI thing. And now it's, computer chips, and now it's NVIDIA, now it's master stock, all those sorts of things.
I mean, but are we talking about the psychology of investing or the psychology of finance?
Well, I thought that was investing. Is that?
Because I guess it'd be slightly. I think it'd be slightly. There is slight differences if you're talking more generalistic on finances versus, I think, investing. I think that it's a subset, I guess I'd say, of the finances conversation.
Correct.
Yeah. One aspect of what you were saying then, and I guess one of the notes I was taking was, all of that is good and well, but you have to be in a certain position to be even thinking in that state, I guess I would say.
Well, you got to have some money, some capital.
Correct, yeah. Because I guess part of it, I guess, is psychology, and you were saying it's an emotional beat. All of that means diddly fucking squat if you haven't gotten past your must-have in life. So as a human, as a mere mortal, you have to have the things that you need to survive and exist, right?
Okay, yeah. I'm the person I was talking to then. The imaginary one would be someone who's, got some income, probably through a job, steadily in. They've sorted out the basics of rent, food, and so they might have. It doesn't really matter the amount. They might have $100 to be able to put into something. 1,000, 10,000, 100,000. I think all of those more or less stay the same, just depending on the psychology, I guess, will change depend on your risk averseness or your risk taking capabilities, which I'll touch upon later. So
so like with that stated, so we've got to rate. We're not. Yeah, obviously there's like the must-haves in a human that you kind of want, and obviously you can live without them. Technically, you could be homeless and make it do, but in general, I'm sure you want to live in a place,
homeless
have some
degens with their meme coins on their phones.
Yeah, look, you probably want to have some level of, Maslow's hierarchy of needs requirements met. Cool. We're going beyond that point. I guess psychology goes beyond that, in that underlying it, I guess you would go towards what should you have or what could you have? The abundance, or go even deeper to the question of why is it that you invest? Because this is something that I've tackled now for a few years now in the conversation, in that at the very, as you state that question, let's just say, why would you invest in this? And let's just say it's Bitcoin. Oh, price goes up. Let's just say that. Now, there's other reasons to that particular asset that makes it great as an investment. Not just perhaps the financial aspect, but the operability on it in comparison to other systems. Cool. You could talk about that. So there's various reasons why it's a value asset, right? Same thing you could say with property, same thing. But the main question I think it needs to be answered correctly, which then ties to the psychology of a person is, yeah, but like why? Like why do you actually care about that? What is the reason? I've said this, thought about it maybe a year and a bit ago, right? I now live in a place that I really want to live. I have a growing family. I've got certain things that I've got. The query or question and the psychology that goes between this is, on one aspect, I listen to, or I've got friends, or I see people who, in whatever quota you want to think from an investing perspective, holy heck, it's just multiple levels down the line in terms of what they're doing. But if you had to, and every individual needs to be this, it's that line of, yeah, but why do you want to invest? And the psychology that sits behind that is a really, really important thing, which I think is tied with then how much you'd be willing to risk, how much you'd be willing to do. We mentioned this, I don't know if we were talking about it on the podcast or we were saying it off the podcast, in relation to the casino. At a casino, there's this basically 1 in 1,000, 1 in 2,000 chance that you might get in a week. Is it weekly or monthly?
So it's a weekly. So basically, at the Brisbane casino, on a Wednesday evening, they'll have it's like a super draw or something for anyone who's played in the last month. They'll just randomly call out their name, and you can win 40 grand to 50 grand,
sure.
something like that. And then at some point they cap it, and then they're like, someone must win tonight, and then so it goes from like probably a 1 in 100,000, 200,000 chance.
Sure.
Down to a 1 in 1,000 chance.
So I think it's a good litmus test of asking those type of hypotheticals, because I think they can arrive at why or what you would actually do with money or with a good investment. Because let's just take, for instance, and we probably don't have to answer this, but just play at home here and be more light with this. If you landed and you won $50,000, what would you do with that $50,000? I think varying answers depending on your circumstances, what you want to do, what you enjoy. Fine. Put that aside. Next question. Let's get heavy, right? You win $100 million, right? Kind of like a lottery. Now, there's going to be people who are going to, a percentage, who are going to just blow the $100 million and off it goes. Let's just put aside those people.
A rather high percentage. That's
but let's put away those individuals and just the rest who might have a propensity to want to invest or do things, to manage it better. If you give someone $100 million, just think about it in your mind. Pause for a second. It's like, what are you going to do with it? And you can start listing off like, well, I do this and this and this. I'm sure that a lot of the things that you'd probably come up with are going to be liabilities. If you're really in the mindset of investing in growth, some of it, you maybe pick a lot of assets, a lot of growth assets. Fine. Now, if the week after I gave you another $100 million, yeah, here you go, here's another $100 million. Does it change what you do with $100 million? As in, if you keep getting this additional big sums of money, which for most humans on earth is going to be a gigantic change to whatever you decide to do. The underlying question is, what changes in your life? What would you want it to change with that extra amount of money? And I think the part of the answer of the psychology of investing has to be tied in with that, because if you ask me that question, so I guess I'll answer it. If you gave me $100 million, similarly, I'd probably say 70% goes to growing assets that are dividend yielding and growth yielding or something like that. The rest, blow it. Have a great time, share it with people, whatever. If you gave me another 100, part of me goes, I don't know if it would change anything. It doesn't actually, at that point, if I was to add another whole boatload of assets, it doesn't change my life nor the lifestyle that I would want to lead in any dramatic effect. And I think each person has to ask that question or know how to really introspect that question correctly. Otherwise, and I'm sure people will say, well, if you had another $100 million, you can get a plane and you can do these sort of things. Then I think it's more of a challenge on the psychological aspect of, okay, but then what is your enough? Because if you never have a pretty clear line of what enough is, then you're going to go on the deep end when it comes into investing, because it isn't as cut and dry around, well, what is it that you're aiming for? Another aspect, for me personally, from a family perspective, I don't want more assets, nor growth in assets. That helps me zilch. I need cash flow. Cash flow is like my king for me. I wouldn't care about holding an asset that triples in price necessarily. That's not beneficial in the sense of my lifestyle is now at a space where I just need enough cash flow that supports that, and then I'm able to go and do other things that free me up. Again, that sort of articulation, and that's not even well articulated. I think the psychology of finance or investing has to be tied to how well can you answer some of these questions around what it is that you want to do. Another concept of it is called COIL, cost of ideal living. And, you could do equations, you could do numbers, but basically it's the statement of per month, what would be your ideal life cost? I've done this, and I think it's something like $27,000 a month, right? And there's just crazy listings and whatnot. Now, again, if I invest and get to $25,000 a month or $50,000 a month, and then the idea comes, there's another potential here that you could do this and spend these hours to get quadruple that. Again, the question that has really got to be asked is why? If you're already meeting the ideal cost of living, and you can make genuine decisions around, but it's about giving, it's about donating more, it's about saving other people's lives, it's about helping out your family, it's friends. Okay, that's justifiable. But I think a lot of those, those are the real questions that form the psychology of investing. Otherwise, you can get real prone to then be emotionally dragged into a myriad of things.
Let's jump right to the beginning again, which is you've got someone. Why? What is investing? I guess we probably should have started off with the definition. I haven't looked this up, so I'm just going off the top of my head here. I imagine it'd be something like utilizing a resource to hopefully with the end goal of getting extra resource from that is what I imagine. It's something like that. Mm-hmm. So when you were just saying then, if you got 100 million and then you just said cash flow is your main priority, then surely the most optimal thing for you would not to be put it in growth dividends and things which give you cash back. You just hold the cash because then you've got $100 million cash flow. You don't need to. So obviously then if you're wanting to put it into those things, then there's an extra additional thing, which is like, okay, yes, cash flow is important to me, but I would like my resource to grow a bit as well. Because if you're just holding that 100 million,
I wouldn't have said necessarily the main says that. It would be more because I would not want to be holding that much in a bank account. I guess I would say, given the limitation of how much would be insured if something went tits up or whatever.
Okay.
I think it'd be really the distribution of the asset. But I get what you're saying.
So it's a bit related to other things, which once again then is that you're worried about it diminishing because it's going to, if you have that, then you've got a risk that it's going to diminish because bank collapses, you're only insured for $1 million, 500,000, 250. I don't know what the limit here is in Australia. So I guess the psychology is like, okay, I've got something I want to improve. It's almost like a self-development mindset. And this is why you'll see a lot of overlap between like self-development gurus, one of the classic quintessential books of self-help, one of the only ones I really recommend and think if you've read this, you've read almost all of them. Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill. Mm-hmm. That whole book is think, and then grow rich, get some money, get some extra resources. So that this is, you can invest in yourself. So a lot of people will talk about, I had 10 grand and I spent it on like a mastermind course, or I spent it on myself to go to therapy or something. In this case, I'm going to stay away from that and talk more about the money side of things because I think that's probably more when you say the word invest. That's what people expect more. But it's a similar sort of thing where it's like I've got a resource, I'm trying to put it in something and end up having either more of that same resource being money or additional benefits from that. Because I guess like you could say, I'm investing in the casino. Sure, you're losing money, but maybe you're having a really fun time and that's a good investment for you. That gets into a whole different aspect of psychology. So
look, I just think in general with psychology, or what is investing? And as you say, I think it's probably pretty close. Using or leveraging a resource to expect maybe a greater resource or a greater value at X amount of time. I think the damage can come when you go into the slippery slope of could haves in humans and mere mortals, and you then start being led by externalities or expectations versus the real internal, but what exactly is it that you want, need, could have. It probably often, I think if you really looked at it, it'd be a lot less than what you actually think that it is needed from an investing perspective.
Yeah. When you were talking before about, someone's got 100 million, what are they going to do with it? It's very much dependent on what their goals are, So if someone, and I think this is different, if you're like a general, let's say millennial, say my brother, he might have 100,000, maybe even 10 grand to invest. I think this is why a lot of people talk about, you should take a lot more risks when you're younger and do the things where your investing profile is going to change. For example, where you certainly want more of it. You want it to grow because, if you got 100 and then you get, 10% the next year, or what's the average stock market? It's like 8%. So over 10 years, you double it. If you've got 100, if you put 100 in and you double it to 200, like it's not materially going to change your life much. So that's where, you might want to consider going further off the risk curve and doing crazy things. And then, then it's like, I only lost 100 versus, my dad, for example, who's in his late 60s, he's not going to be looking to
be super risky.
Double his money in a year because, for him, once again, what was it? Cost of ideal living. He's pretty close to it. He just needs to kind of maintain the assets he's already got because he built it up over the last 30, 40 years of his working life and investing life. So it depends on your mindset. So that's probably a good starting point as well. Like the psychology, probably need to start with some self-reflection. Like, what is it that I want? How quickly do I want it? And then you can kind of decide on the types of things.
Look, the other example that often gets mentioned is, it's kind of similar. It's retirement. And with often people will say like, oh, when I retire, I'm going to play golf every weekend. I'm going to buy a boat and I'm going to go. And then you work all your life, you invest. Let's just say you make all this money and you're like, fuck yes, I can now play golf every week and I can go boat. And you do that and you fucking hate it. And so it's like, well, fuck, what's the point? Like you just did all this investing, got all this money.
Now counter that, my dad does this and he's having the time of his life. So.
But your dad played golf for a lot of his life and he knew that he enjoyed it. He also played tennis and he knew, so he tried it and knew that he enjoyed it. And so that was fine. It's kind of similar with me with the particular ventures in the fitness space I'm looking to do. I've now validated it 10 plus years that there's a lot of joy in that.
Yeah, okay.
I will probably have no qualms and going heavy on that space because of that proof. If you're young though, and you go, you know what I need? I need a plane. I need a plane.
Caribbean island.
I need a Caribbean island. And I need 2 helicopters.
Sure.
Part of this is, at the best of times, maybe you have a great family and that helps. It comes with downsides, but maybe you get all the way to that and you're like, you know what? Actually kind of sucks because whatever.
I've got no friends to
I'll tell you me
Caribbean
personally,
island.
if I had unbelievable amount of assets and I could live in Paris or New York or whatever. You know what? I'd still like to live here in Brisbane because I enjoy it. Like it's really nice. I enjoy living.
I hate French people.
When I travel a lot, I often want to get back into my home space and do my thing. I've known this now about myself. I don't actually want to travel a lot now. I don't want to travel. The idea, and this is not a bad thing. It's just who I am. I don't want to travel for 6 months backpacking. It's both, I'm not at that stage, nor do I find that much joy in doing that. I find a lot of joy in doing my routine and exploring different things in short bursts. That carries over into the psychology of investing because if you're not purposeful about what you are doing for the investment, you're going to get yourself in some jacked up spaces where it's the typical then, quote unquote, you successfully invest into whatever it may be, whatever asset, whatever idea, money goes up, you got all this money, but then if your expectations are either led by then the individuals that you're hanging around, or you've got external expectations of, now I'm making 10 mil a year, I should be living on this areas and not doing that. that's going to bite you, because maybe that's not actually what you want. You get yourself into even though you're making maybe potentially a lot of money, you then, multiply by 10 your expenses per month, which then means you need to like grow even more to keep it up. I would say for the large majority of Mere Mortal listening to this, a very low percentage would know what their ideal cost of living is, and even fewer would have the logical or structures or define maybe processes in place to maintain that, to kind of go like, if I've met that, cool, I can now be more risk averse, more relaxed about my investing. I think the majority of people would go, oh, if I double this, I want to double it again. Like, I want to go more. Let's go heavier. Let's go bigger. Let's do more. And I think that can be a real challenge. We've talked about the concept of enough beforehand as well, but I think that aspect of the psychological aspect of investing can be the hardest. I would even go as far as to say, and again, this is for those who have the means to do this, to invest and do okay is easy. It's easy. Like, yes, most often people have lost money in investing. Of course they have.
Really?
Or like people have lost money if you invest into things.
Sure, but most people? I mean,
no, sorry.
As in,
I'd say like almost everyone
will have had
a loss, correct.
Something, but yeah, not necessarily.
But in general,
gotcha.
like, as humanity is moving towards a path of more liquidity, more availability,
more abundance, more productivity, more efficiency.
It'll be like a lifts or boats. Like, everyone will probably go well from it. But I think the distinction is then why it is that you're doing that. What is it that you need? What is the best path that it's going to be? You can sleep at night and not be worried. I've done the very short-term trading, right, with some huge wins and huge losses. Yeah. I hated that. I could not do. People that I see like,
check out our COVID episodes.
I'll go like short on Bitcoin or long on this or what. Yeah, you can make a ridiculous amount of money, but mentally I'm like, now especially, man, there's no way I would want to be doing that at all. That's just the mental load of doing that burden. I don't want to do that.
Yeah,
I want to have things that are just, you wake up and like, cool, it just goes on. So it very much depends on a lot of those underlying questions that I think then form what the psychology is that you present with investing in general.
Yeah, probably the best mindset to have is one of optimism. And I think this is rational optimism as well. Read a book like, I think it's The Better Angels Have Our Nature, or maybe it's Enlightenment Now by Steven Pinker. Mm-hmm. And that's one where it's just like laid out graph after graph after graph showing, humanity's improving health-wise, and not just in like the rich countries, but the poor countries as well. Everything is going up. Everyone as a whole are richer than they used to be. There's down periods for sure, like the middle class in certain countries has had a hit probably over the last like 3 decades maybe.
But so this way, but is it too much maybe? Maybe, but I'd say 98% of humanity right now in the world, every single person is better off than a king was in the 1600s.
Yeah.
Basically that. So like, imagine that, right? It's just
correct.
The richest, most famous, most powerful people 500 years ago would literally be scum.
Yeah.
In comparison to every single individual on earth, bar some really unfortunate humans.
They would be eating rotten meat because they had to, because
correct.
X reason. They would be, having fucking cold showers every day. God damn, man. I'm glad I wasn't born in the 1500s.
Now, and think about it this way. Actually, I hadn't thought about it, but this concept.
They wouldn't be having showers. They'd be bathing in the fucking river.
But even think about it from that concept of, okay, 500 years ago, that's changed a lot. That's 500 years, right? And so what their ideal cost of living and what cost of living and like what good living meant is so different to it to now. Dude, in 50 years, what living is going to change, I reckon, dramatically again. And again, then goes, well, the amount of cost that's needed to have an ideal living, 500 years ago is probably ridiculously low in what it is today. Is it going to be similar that in 50 years from now, you can have the cost of living to, do the things that you think are like a dream, and it just relatively is very cheap, it's very common, it's very efficient. Will your idea of what living is to your optimal ways just keep shifting and shifting and shifting and shifting the goalposts based on the fact that there's availability? Or will you have the ability to go, you know what, no, like this is I'm drawing the line in the sand, like I'm happy. Yes, you could be being risky and having more wins, but you recognize that actually this is now my enough and everything else after this is bonus. And in fact, I'm just going to go super risk averse, and that means X, Y, Z.
Yeah, probably once again, the starting point, self-reflection. What am I like? Okay, I'm naturally like pessimistic. I hate people. Let's just say like this is your general mindset. And then you go, okay, fuck, there's all this positivity around. One saying, GDP's increasing year after year, this sort of stuff. You can still use that to your advantage. I'm trying to think of the Black Swan by Nassim Nicholas Taleb. I can't remember if he ever used that in a sense of a positive way, as in there's going to be black swans which are to the upside. He's more noted for the black swan being a negative event which you want to have, with a small amount of exposure to in the event that something really bad happens, you can profit very greatly from. That's more what I've remember from him. I'm not sure if he ever used it in the black swan in a positive way, as in a very, very unlikely positive event that could happen. An example of this would be Satoshi Nakamoto once wrote something along the lines of, it's worth having just a little bit of Bitcoin just in case it takes off, and he wrote this, of course, in, pre-2012. So yes, that was like a black swan in a positive sense, where it's like, oh yeah, okay, it's almost zero risk to me to actually have this little thing here. Could have a good time.
There's this random thing that I saw pop up when it was on LinkedIn. It was, if you'd bought $100 of Bitcoin, every time that the popular media, like the media channels, like the big players, had said Bitcoin is dead, you would have $99.97 million, something like that. Yeah, it's pretty good. Like, damn.
For sure. So there's definitely the sense where you can invest as well, even if you've got a negative mindset, maybe more like a prepper mindset, a doomsdayer mindset, a pessimistic mindset. You can still do that. It's just going to have to require a different alteration of how you go about it. So it's not like you're doomed if you're not a happy, positive person from the get-go. No, there's still different ways, but once again, this starting with a bit of self-reflection. I wrote this one bit here, which is, we'll do this bit and then we'll get onto the boostergrams. Becoming mercenary. This is something I've done a bit for myself recently. So definition for mercenary: primarily concerned with making money at the expense of ethics. You're like, damn, Kyron, that's pretty fucked up, man. You're a bad person now. I've had to become more mercenary in these, particularly like last 2-3 years, because I don't know. This was also having a less emotional connection to money. Not that I was ever really that emotional to it, but you certainly saw in 2021 when we were talking about NFTs and things like this, we were getting giddy. It was like, oh my God, it's gone up to 21 ETH. Now it's 45 ETH. Like, holy fuck, I'm sitting on 145 grand. It's crazy.
I could tell you exactly how much I was sitting on NFTs. If you want to,
sure.
The Mere Mortal likes to know that, because it's nothing close to that now, but it shows you that at that time I was very much holding it in the full expectation of, holy man, money goes up, like more better. Yeah. Whereas if I'd actually just gone like, you know what, that's met, and I didn't think about it in that manner at all. I was just like, oh, whatever, if it gets there, it gets there. But yeah, it was, I noted it, April 22, 603,000 in NFTs. That is how much I had. That is nowhere near that number anymore. But if I wasn't thinking about it in April 22, I wasn't thinking about it from a perspective of shit with that, like that's going to meet X, Y, Z. At that point, I didn't need that cash flow. Cash flow was totally fine. Changes the dynamic of where you're at.
So a mind shift for me that has occurred in the past 3 years is, I guess, having a bit of a partition from my idealism, which I certainly do have in me, and then kind of divorcing that from my actions a little bit. So I think ethics still needs to be the starting point. You got to go, okay, how do I want to make money? Do I want to rob people? Do I want to, scam people? Do I want to be a fraudster? That sort of shit. But some people choose to do that, sure. I guess. I don't know if that's necessarily the starting point. Look at someone like Sam Bankman-Fried. Was that his starting point? Probably not, but then he, found justifications of, okay, no, I'm using customer money because I need to do this, and I'm eventually going to give it all away through effective altruism. And you're like, okay, well, yeah, that's good and all saying that, but you know, you ended up losing all of it. So how the fuck are you going to do that, you stupid cunt? But so spend the time on your ethics, figure out what's meaningful to you. Hopefully you go, okay, I'd rather it, be for the betterment of humanity. I'd rather invest in things which are going to make humanity better. So this is why I would never buy anything related to like a war making of weapons or a company related to that. At least directly, there's always like
some level of indirect connections.
Yeah, it's like the fourth degree, but at least tighten it to the first degree. You're not doing that. But I cannot spend all of my time listening to BTC and V4V podcasts and spending all of my energy on that, even though I think those are some of the most important things I've ever come across. I simply cannot spend all of my time on that, and even though it's very idealistic, I need to do some other things because I'll grind myself into oblivion, essentially. And so to do better, I need to spend time on myself, help others in my life, and honestly, make money in things I don't particularly believe in, but it's with the kind of the end goal, I guess, or divorcing the ethics from actually how I make money. Now, once again, I don't want it to be in a bad way, but in a neutral way where it's not like the most idealistic thing. It's that emotional control again, because with idealism comes like the giddiness. I used to have sleepless nights thinking about value for value. When I first came across Bitcoin and being able to use it on the Lightning Network for podcasts, like that was the biggest shit in my mind. I thought this is going to change the world. Like this is the thing. And if I had spent all of my time and money and energy on creating a Lightning node, putting all of my liquidity into it, trying to improve that, make it better, sure, there might be some sort of business model there, but it would probably end up me having to create a business, fucking managing people, all the sort of stuff which I don't want to do. And honestly, ethically, I'll be a shit manager. I'm putting it out there. I'm not going to be the best boss. So the world would be a worse off place if I followed that idealism.
Okay. Yeah. You have to have that clarity of mind as well when it comes into all this.
The main thing, divorcing the emotions from what you're investing in. If you're just chucking money into the laytest startup related to I don't know, Beyond Meat, ethical veganism, or I'm going to save the planet by this revolutionary new technology of, I don't know, extracting fucking water from plants to, or solar power, and you're not being, I guess, a bit more careful and critical with it and allowing that idealism to take you away, you're going to make some bad decisions.
Yeah, well, emotionally influenced, probably not a state you want to be when it comes to something like investing. That's the reality of it.
Unless you're investing in the Mere Mortals, as we're going to talk about now, in the Boostergram
then
Lounge.
that's the right place.
In which case, you want the giddiness.
Correct.
And if you're feeling depressed, it's probably because you haven't invested in us and sent through a Boostergram. So for those who don't know, at home, Boostergram is when you send in some support directly to the show via the monetary means using a podcasting app such as Fountain, Podcasting 2.08 app, Fountain, True Fans, Podcast Guru, Podverse, Cast-O-Matic, a whole bunch of them. Go to our website, meremortalspodcast.com/support. And we'd like to call out these people who have sent in some money to us, and they usually attach a message as well. So
correct.
What do we got? I think we had 2 for this week.
One, because the other one came through live.
No, so we didn't read out that one. So read out the last live one.
Okay, cool. Okay, cool. So that one was from Chad F. Sent 1,111 sats in using Podverse. And he said, I've got Albi Hub set up on my own Lightning node, and I'm going down with the ship.
Yeah, so one thing I forgot to mention last week was as a listener, you also have the ability to get a Lightning node. And use Albi Hub, or even just your own Lightning node via whatever mechanism, and be able to join that up to these apps, because you can use Albi as a kind of extension through that. So that's not going away. It certainly requires a lot more steps and a lot more effort.
Right, a lot more effort.
Energy.
It does not become easier.
Yeah, so if you've always thought like, oh, I just want to use this, or I want to send some support into the Mere Mortals, go to Fountain. Yeah. That'll be the easiest for the moment.
But then, in saying that, we got Gene Everett sending through 333 sats using Fountain. He says, personally, I can't stand Fountain since the Nonster switch. Lost all following and half the accounts I managed to rediscover. I can't boost. Bummer.
Yeah, that's a shame. I also had a big following on Fountain. I was rather influential on there for a very small period of time. I haven't used any of the Nostr stuff. There's so many. Like, you could use Firecaster, which is more of an Ethereum-based one. Nostr is more of a Bitcoin one. I'm sure there's going to be a Solana one and another one. There's Blue Sky if you're into like left-wing politics. Yep. There's Mastodon, which I do have, but I don't really use. Yeah, there's a lot of social media platforms out there now, and very niche ones actually, which is, I don't know, maybe it's a good thing.
Honestly, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's a good thing. I don't know if it creates more problems in trying to split, like the demand is split, but then the demand of, if you're putting it into a particular place, it's more aligned to maybe the people that you want to reach. I don't know.
Have you heard of this one? It's on Farcaster, so the Ethereum one. And basically, someone set up a bot where you can message this bot, and I think you give it like a little bit of money, and you essentially like send a picture, a name, and an amount, and it will automatically create the coin for you that you want from this. So it's kind of like Pump.fun, but an even easier one. You can just do it while drunk on Twitter /Farcaster. I think they might even have a Twitter integration, so you could do a similar thing there. And yeah, essentially you're just like, just create this thing for me, bro, and type it in, and it'll create a meme coin for you.
Wow. Okay.
Or maybe a revolutionary coin that's going to change the world. Who am I to say?
Yeah, exactly. But that's crazy. Okay.
So yeah, there's certainly a lot more functionality. You can do a lot of different things on these apps, especially when they're integrated with a cryptocurrency, which allows you to take actions and send money back and forth, or activate this bot, which will do this thing. So I can see why there'd be a lot more fun and interesting in certain cases. Have I tried them out? No. Ain't nobody got time for that. And I'm not a big social media guy, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, probably not.
That's me at all. But yeah, thank you, Chad F and Gene, for your support. Thank you. Very much appreciated.
Thank you very much. Now, what's the second part?
So the second one was on Paradox, and I had two things here, which were time and reflection. And so for the time, I think I only fully understood risk-adjusted return recently, which is absolutely insane. So you'd have heard of this before, Juan? Could you try and explain it to someone at home?
I would be the exact, because I kind of came up with my own like risk-adjusted return.
Well, tell me your version.
What did I call it?
This is like
return on investment with risk included, something to that, like RORI or something like that.
But
basically, it was like, what's a return on the investment, but then multiplied by a risk factor to give me, well, if there's a probability of this working 20% of the time, but the value that I actually get is this much amount, well, is that better than 80% certainty of getting something, but the return on the investment being half? Something to that effect.
Yeah, sure. So with investing, I think a lot of it is also, another phrase for it would be, a good investor is one who can predict the future, essentially, relatively accurately. And so risk is also just another word for probability. What's the probability of a certain action occurring, whether it's good, whether it's bad? You can make money off both of those. And so I can't believe this took me so long till I really understood this, which is risk-adjusted return is essentially, let's say you've got $1,000 and you're like, okay, I'm going to put $1 into this super risky thing. I'm going to put $10 into this pretty risky thing. I'm going to put $100 into this super other risky thing. And, all right, you're going to start off with 1,111. And I'm going to put $1,000 into something that I think is pretty safe. if you've done your calculations right and your ability to predict the future right, you should actually end up with, after a certain time period, all of those investments being worth the same thing. That's like the best risk-adjusted return that you can do. The thing that was worth $1 went up more than 1,000, like 10,000x. This other one went up, 800 and something x. The $10 one, etc., etc. So at a certain point in time, everything should be equal. Now, of course, the world doesn't work like that. Everything's not going to be equal at the same amount of time. But that's essentially how it's almost like the barbell strategy that Juan's talked about before, and people have talked about investing, which is you've got something which is really, really safe and I saw this cool graph the other day, which was like for people in the past, it would be, so for boomers, it was bonds. And then on the other side of the barbell, the really risky thing would be stocks. You take someone perhaps from our generation, maybe a little bit higher than us. So what are we? We're Gen Y, also known as millennials, I believe.
Yeah.
People keep changing the fucking names. Gen Y or Gen X, which was above us, it would be having some stocks and then maybe BTC as your really risky one. For people like my brother, what are they called? They're not millennials. They're
Gen Z.
Gen Z. They would have maybe Bitcoin as their really safe one, and then meme coins as their really risky one. And so you can see how it changes over time.
What about Gen Alpha, where
meme
coins are the safe?
What's
their risky?
Fucked. I have no idea. But
casino.
I just had this clicking moment where where that just really made sense to me. And I go, oh, okay, I get this now. And yeah, sure, you can maybe have some weight in the middle of those barbells if you're the boomer who has changed their mind. They're a bit more with the times perhaps. So they've got their bonds, then they've got the stocks in the middle, and then BTCs, they're really risky one. I guess that could change over time. But I think the trick to be able to envision the far off distant position you want to be in, you have to kind of work back to get there from where you are. It's really hard to say. It's like being schizophrenic is generally viewed as a bad thing. But honestly, being able to hold like two opposing, perhaps contrasting is a better word, ideas at the same time is pretty powerful. So being able to see like, okay, this is where I'm at now, this is where I want to be in the future, I predict this is going to happen, but this could not happen at the same time. Probabilities are like that. You have to imagine both outcomes being able to happen, and then just deciding like which is the weight. Is it more on this one? Is it more on this one? And for some of them, it's like it's obviously going to happen. The sun's going to rise tomorrow, but it also might not. Because there's a very small possibility an asteroid will hit you, or I guess in a certain case, if you die right now, the sun's not going to rise tomorrow for you. So there's certainly, not advocating for schizophrenia here. I'm not sure anyone's ever done that ever, but there is something to that ability of being able to like look into the future and being able to hold two opposing things and be able to weight them correctly.
Yeah, I guess I'd probably similar, but maybe putting it in a different way. And it, I guess, connects with the moving away from being emotional to being more rational, logical with your investing. The clearer you can be about risk/probability factors in your investments, the better you're going to be if you can really objectively look at something. So as you mentioned, if it was 2012 and you were looking at Bitcoin, your probability or risk measures for that in terms of its success, because it's so unknown, you kind of go, no idea. So then adjust what you can put into it with a full expectation that you might lose it all. Again, what's the probability of losing it all? What's the probability of making 10x, 100x, 1000x, whatever, right? And you can make that statement. Fast forward to now, end of 2024, you might look at the probability of Bitcoin being a great store of, just cash, like assets in general, store of value, its ability to go up or down, right? Again, those probability factors differ. I think it's the more objective, the more rational, the more logically you can look and really assess what the probability looks like, the better. I made I think I was talking about it in the previous podcast, but looking at a particular business plan of an idea that came up, I'd probably say that in my mind, there was a 40% chance of it working with, a certain amount of money that needed to be invested and time to create it. Once I actually did my due diligence of thinking about it and putting it down on paper, the amount you'd actually need doubled up. The time frame was much longer. The investment of time, my own time, was much more than I thought, and the return wasn't even that great. So then it actually changes both the amount of return that could be expected and the risk that was inherent to it. And all of a sudden, it went from, that could be an idea to, no way, that amount of money or that amount of energy could be spent in multiple other locations to do way more things. So you need to be objective. And if I'd let just emotionally at that moment in time when an idea popped up and I really want to dive into it, could have been, a terrible thing to begin. But looking at it objectively, I think it's okay to be led by emotion or a gut feel, and then be really, really ruthless with getting objective with it and getting the numbers down, as people say, being decisive around, yes, but what does it actually look like? Very precise in the numbers. If things were to work out or not work out, to be able to put a plan together. Often, a business plan when it comes to businesses in general, they don't necessarily are all perfect. I've seen business plans for Airbnb and a few others. Some of them don't work out exactly how or they change the mode of how they earn the income. And that's fine. You just got to put a time in place. But it can't be so unbelievably off that, you go, my plan for investing, I'm going to sell my house and buy Hosky. And so I'll just live on the streets. And I predict based on the chatter, 3 years, Hosky will go up and then I'll sell it. Man, that's a heavy risk. That's a heavy risk. If you try to maneuver that, I don't even know if you could move the numbers in such a way that the risk of that would actually beat other forms of investing that you might be able to do.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a 0.0001% probability that it'll be even better, but you got to look objectively. Would you take that if you ran the simulation 1,000 times over? Probably not.
Which is very hard because for me, objectivity and probability almost are polar opposites. I've always struggled with. I'm pretty good at math and science. That was certainly my easy thing. I didn't have to study too hard and I'd get good grades and stuff. But probability was always one thing that just messed me up. I really, really struggled with that. And I'd say probably even to this day, it's certainly the weakest point that I've had in any math related things. And, how can we be objective about, a future scenario of is this going to happen or is this going to happen? A classic example, on your weather app, a lot of times you'll see the probability. I can bring it up right now. And I always used to think, this is the probability that it's going to rain. So at the moment, it says 67% chance. And I always just assume, okay, there's a 67% chance it's going to rain of some sort. Mm-hmm. That's not what that thing actually means. It means it's going to rain and probably 67% of the area of this the gap that we're in right now is going to get rainfall. Which is completely different. That's a completely different thing. And so learning about what the probability of what you're actually measuring is it's very hard. I can understand why almost everyone has lost money in some sort of venture and thing before.
Something similar to that. I would get. So we talked about psychology of investing, and I guess more you're talking paradoxes, but also part of the maths. I think if you're wanting to become better at investing, I think you also have to be pretty good at probability and mathematics and numbers, just in general, just getting acquainted with that, because it's very easy to, Elon Musk walks into a meeting of 10 people. On average, everyone's a billionaire in the meeting.
Okay.
That's the average because he's got so much money.
Yeah, that's probably true.
But individually, with just him, right? Because he's worth $270 billion.
I thought because he would only be associating with billionaires.
No. So then you go, okay, well, everyone has been. It's like that conversation of, well, just because there's one person has outsized results doesn't mean that probabilistically, if you were to jump into that particular area, are you going to achieve it? If you go to an event, Bitcoin party, and one person was there in 2011 and bought a whole host, and everyone else has got 0.002 Bitcoin or something like that, it doesn't mean that everyone on average in that party is wealthy. There's one person with outsized results, and everyone else kind of came in afterwards. in a similar thing with investing, be very wary of there's things like average, but there's also like the variation for something like probability. Like probability will give you a number that you can look at, and that'll be like, oh, there's the average or the percentage. But then when you maybe see the spread, the deviation from the mean, let's just say, if the deviation from the mean is like gigantic, right, from a curved or whatever distribution it is, okay, maybe you got to be realistic and be like, oh shit, there's a lot of variance in that particular thing. So it's not like it's a certainty that you're going to be that. It's, oh, there's 3 people who are successful in investing in, I don't know, gigantic shorting currencies. And there's some stories around some people shorting the New Zealand dollar and the UK pound, and they made like a ridiculous amounts of money.
Oh, you're talking about Soros.
And a couple of other people who did that. So like huge amount of money that they made. You might, if I was to read that story, I don't know exactly the maths of this, but if I was to read that from an investing perspective, I'd be like, shit, you can make a lot of fucking money doing that. Like maybe I should look into it. I reckon there'd be so many more who've just absolutely lost everything in doing a lot of those things. But it's distributed on an average, maybe towards what looks better because so many people have outsized results. That you also got to be wary of when it comes into an investment perspective.
Yeah, for me, I use a lot of because you got to, okay, I want to invest, where do I start? You know, and this is where it's really hard, and where I tend to advocate, like, look at people who you admire, who you want to be in their position, or you want to get to maybe perhaps a similar level to where they are, something like that. And what are the characteristics of them rather than what they actually got into, you know? So for me, someone like Eric Voorhees, he's a very wealthy dude. Lord knows how much. You know, there's pictures of him at a Bitcoin booth celebrating the first halving party, and, you know, it's him and like 4 other guys. And that would have been what, 2012, 2013, something like that. He's the sort of person where it's like, okay, well, you know, he's so focused on, I guess, like the libertarian ideals. Mm-hmm. And every time that I hear him speak, it's almost like he's starting from this groundwork. And I think that was what enabled him to recognize the opportunity that was Bitcoin, and then subsequently Ethereum, and then probably other things. I don't know. With him and other people like that, investing's weird because like I said, you need to put all this upfront time and energy, and then I feel you should do all of your work, and then you just do the final thing of actually buying whatever it is. And then maybe like a slight little bit of management checking in, you know, a year later. With Bitcoin, for example, I could not listen to another Bitcoin podcast for 10, 12 years, and I would still feel pretty confident of where it's at.
Sure.
And that it would have some sort of return. Now, how much it was, that's up to like the whims of the market. But there's this thing with self-reflection as well, which was, you know, how do you realize that you're wrong on something? So, you know, you've made bad investments. I've made bad investments. We've lost capital. For one, I know he's had a couple which have gone to zero. Once again, check out the COVID times. I've had, I think, just one thing that's gone to absolute zero. So you kind of need to seek out information that actually proves that you're wrong as well. So you're like, okay, here's my probabilities, and you're getting close to like, okay, I think this is a sure thing. This is a good idea. I'm going to invest in it. I think there's a worth of actually then once again becoming schizophrenic, going into the paradox and going, okay, but how? Like, let me look up every, you know, Warren Buffett says Bitcoin's, Charlie Munger says Bitcoin's rat poison, rat poison squared. Holy shit, like, he's a really good investor. Yes, he is. But, you know, he's a really old guy, and he's just not obviously spent any time with that at all, other than just going, I don't like this thing. So, for example, I recently sold the last of my stonks. So I'm officially all in on crypto now.
All out of stonks.
I got no more stonks, which has allowed me to do a complete recap of my whole investing history from starting from 2012 to now in 2024.
Yep.
It's not pretty, man. It's not pretty. I am terrible at capital gain appreciation. I have more money I took out more money in terms of the worth of the stocks from putting it in, but it was a marginal percent. Very, very little. And what saved me was actually just dividends, having dividends and cash flow coming in. Should I have worked harder? I put a fair bit of time into reading financial reports of companies. I don't like doing that, but I was doing that at the time. I was trying to look at like secular trends. What is this kind of thing? Okay, blue chips versus crazy risky ones. The one I lost everything on was a crazy risky Chinese magnesium corporation. If you want to look it up, you can't because it doesn't exist. It's like I don't. It's one of those ones where it's like I've put way more time, energy, and thought into Bitcoin, and that certainly has been the most productive use of time for me, because it's the thing that's gone up the most for myself. Made me the most money out of anything. And that was one where it was like, okay, I did put a whole bunch of time. So if you're really into uranium, it might be worth just going like, okay, I don't care about anything else. I'm just going to focus on uranium and just spend all my time on that. You're probably going to find a stock that'll do well. Yeah. And there's one of those ones where it's like, yeah, I think you need a bit of paradox. There is a lot of energy and investment into something, the time-wise, before making the investment, and then you kind of got to just like let it ride and do its thing. Yeah,
and I think the final thing I was going to say is, and then be prepared to either know when you need to either cash out or let it just roll, no matter where the movement of it.
I'm reading a book at the moment which is called "Devil Take the Hindmost: A History of Financial Speculation," and so it's going over things like the tulip mania, the South Sea bubble is where I'm at the moment, and then there's going to be more stuff. I can't remember if it was published before or after the 2000s stock IC internet craze, but in any case, there's a whole bunch of other things through history. So I'd check out that book review when that comes out in 3 weeks' time, 4 weeks' time, because that's going to have a lot about the speculation side of investing as well, and certainly of people getting caught up emotional-wise with their money, which is probably, like, if there's one thing to take away from this, is just try to divorce the emotions. Unless you're consciously doing it for fun. I've got a couple of meme coins at the moment, and it's a whole bunch of fun. I'm also very, very cautious of not wanting to round trip like Juan did with his NFTs. Sure, it went up to 600,000. He probably put in, I don't know, maybe tens of thousands. So, it was good at the moment. It's back down to that tens of thousands, if maybe, probably around that level. Probably don't know what you have. He round tripped that up and down. It was a good investment for 6 months? and then turned into being very decidedly average. Now, it might be worth more in the future. That's probably why you still have some, perhaps. So, yeah, timing is also very correct. Very hard.
Yeah. And again, that's, if I'd really objectively looked at it, the probability versus value probably went beyond what I thought. But if I had like you've got a selling order and stuff like that, with some of these things would have worked out a whole lot better. Just didn't have it at the time. It was just riding the newness and everything that's happening. And oh my gosh, I mean, glad that I didn't go double down and get a couple of monkeys.
I know I met quite a few people at the VCon recently. Quite a few, a couple of people, at least one, who was saying, "Okay, I met one." Try and be accurate with my words. I met one guy who told me how he bought NFTs, sold them, bought them. He basically did the round trip up and down like you did, but had a whole bunch of capital gains from that, and so he just got reamed tax wise, and then had
nothing to pay it off.
Nothing to pay it off with.
Yeah, that's
so. That you got to be careful of that. Think about tax as well, people. Taxes are pretty important.
Yeah, that'll get you.
In all this.
All right, might leave it there for the psychology of investing. Thank you very much for tuning in. Any live questions at all that we want to just put up? Because again, we do these sessions live on the weekends. So if you do tune in live, feel free to jump in. You can ask the questions. You can send through Boostergrams as well. So you can send us through messages with some sats attached to them as well. We always enjoy getting them. We talked about that with Gene, and we talked about there with Chad F, sending them through.
Absolutely.
Use all the various ones at the moment, Fountain, Podverse, all the various things that does support us majorly. For us,
Yep.
we don't even see that as an investment at the moment. We see it more as the ability to then put back into the system.
Yeah, it's been sitting there
Of what
/
we're
me
doing.
boosting it back to other people. So
Correct.
I have no idea how much is in your wallet.
No idea.
Mine.
No idea. I haven't
We'll
looked
have
at
to
it for a
check
while.
that this next month.
Yeah, exactly. So I have to get off Albi. But I think we'll leave it there. Mere Mortals, thank you very much for tuning in. Next week we'll be doing a bout on Focus.
No.
Not Focus?
We already did that, man.
Oh, man, I'm
did
on
that.
Focus. It's not working. We're doing
Dogs.
Dogs. Sorry, that's what it is. That's what it is. Shit, dogs.
Dogs is next week.
That's going to be an interesting one, actually.
Yeah, I have no
don't
idea
even know
what
we're
that's
going to
gonna
talk
be
about that. Oh, I'm sure there'll be various things that pops up, but that'll be at meanderings for sure. That will not be meetings.
Correct.
That'll be a meandering. So stay tuned for that one. We'll leave it there. Mere Mortals, be well. One out.
Current out.
Good. Good.